My name is Lorraine Moffat. I'm the programming coordinator for Loudoun County Public Library and your host today. Feel free to type your questions or comments in the chat box, and I can relay them to Kris either during or after the program. And it's my pleasure to introduce Kris Loya. She grew up on the island of Trinidad in the Caribbean and moved to Loudoun County in 2009. With no formal watercolor training, her use of the media is very much intuitive and is a lifelong love and passion. Kris loves to share the wonder of watercolor by teaching classes at local art studios, Loudoun County Public Libraries, and as of 2020, online through Zoom. So welcome back, Kris. Can't wait to paint popsicles.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. We are going to paint these fun little popsicles today. I cut these into bookmarks, so they're just plain watercolor paper. You can probably paint on both sides if you wanted to make a double-sided bookmark, but you don't have to turn them into bookmarks. You can turn them into greeting cards or just artwork that you can frame. I was explaining a little bit earlier to Lorraine that I cheated and I used a little bit of neon, a little bit of bright color here. And these are what I used. I won't be using them today because I'll be using regular watercolors. So we can all be on the same playing field. All right, focus. There we go. So these are called Dr. P.H. Martin's Hydrus liquid watercolor. I don't recommend getting these. They're for temporary applications. Like if you were going to create some art to be scanned into the computer, say for an advertisement, or if you were, going to have it printed on something. If you were going to order greeting cards or whatever, you can get that. But these colors will start fading on you fairly quickly in a couple of months. So there is another Dr. P.H. Martin's line called Hydrus. These are the radiants. And Hydrus is permanent, just like these. However, the colors are just not as bright and intense as the radiant. So for today, we're just going to use regular watercolors. And the only reason I painted these with them is because I bought them the day that I painted these, and I can't not use brand new watercolors whenever I paint them. So we're going to paint these. I drew and painted these really tiny because I knew I wanted to turn them into bookmarks, and I do like littler bookmarks just to tuck into the top of my book, but you could make these much larger if you wanted to. So I'm going to put these guys over here so you can see them while we paint, and we're going to start. So I'm going to talk a little bit about supplies, and I'm going to try to stay up here so that the bar with my name on the bottom doesn't block you from what I'm doing. All right, so for our supplies, we have our paintbrush and our water, paper towel to dab our brush off, paints. Mine are regular tube paints squeezed out into pots. I just like to use this because it's easy to carry around with me if I wanted to. And what I do is I just squeeze my paints in here and I allow them to dry overnight, and then I close them up. You don't want them to dry any longer than that because little dust particles will settle onto them and it'll transfer to your painting, and you don't want that. These are Winsor and Newton paints. You can grab any brand that you like. This is just my brand of choice. I have a pencil to draw with and an eraser. Again, if you didn't want to draw, you can just go ahead and draw with your paintbrush like I usually do. But for this shape, I think it's a little easier to draw it and just fill it in. So we're going to start. If you have any questions during the class, you can type it into the chat box and Lorraine will ask me the questions, or she can unmute you and you can ask. But other than that, Lorraine, I'm just popping that link in for you so you have it. Sorry, I forgot to send it earlier.
Got it.
And I'll talk a little bit about that a little later. All right, so we are going to start. And you can dream up any popsicle that you want. Think of what your favorite popsicle is, what your favorite flavors are. I'm a citrus girl. So there's one with lime. There's a blueberry because my husband loves anything blueberry. And I had to have some pink in there somewhere. So I guess this one's like an ombre fruit punch kind of popsicle. So any flavor that you could think of, and any fruit or anything that you want on here. If you want to do like a chocolate popsicle with sprinkles all over it, or a pink with like rainbow sprinkles and make a little unicorn type pop situation, that would be fun too. That's the fun thing about this. You can invent any popsicle you want, even if the flavor doesn't exist. So to make this shape, it's really easy. Think of a U shape, and then you can do straight across on the bottom, or you can curve it slightly like I did. So just go straight up and down, or as straight as you can get it. Doesn't have to be super straight. And then just curve the top. And I'm moving my paper around. It's much easier than trying to twist your arm around. Don't want you to snap your wrists for some artwork. It would be a great story, but maybe not. And then you connect those on the bottom with a slight curve, and that's how you get your popsicle shape. And if you think about it, the stick, it's in the middle. It's almost the same shape, flipped upside down and a lot smaller. You can make your stick as long as you want. It might be kind of fun to elongate the stick and write your name on it, or write a friend's name on it and give it to them as a gift. So you have the two lines, and then you're just going to round off the bottom a little bit. And don't be afraid if you don't get it right the first time. You can erase it. You can fix your lines. Whatever you want to do. And if you're using light colored paints, I extended the bottom there. I'm just going to erase it. You can erase your lines before you paint, so that your lines, you can see where your lines are, but you won't be able to see them through the paint. I'm using darker colors, so I'm just going to leave mine just like that. So that is my popsicle. I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to draw your popsicle, or ask any questions if you have them. And you can do as many of these as you want. We can do a couple of them today. In fact, I probably should have drawn mine sideways so I can get more in on my paper. So maybe I'm going to erase so you can watch me draw it again. Or I can flip my paper over. Hey, how about that? And any pencil and eraser will do. And I think I'm going to put them in different directions and scatter them around. I don't need them to be all in the same direction, but you can do that if you want to. And just so you can see how a real artist works, we change our minds a lot. So I erase that again, because I think I'm going to make it bigger so you can see easier. So I'm going to do 2 on here. Sometimes you have to draw things a couple of times to get your composition down correctly, your shape, the positioning of it. Don't be afraid to erase and erase and erase. This paper can take a lot of beating up. You can erase, you can scrub at it with your paintbrush. It's 140-pound watercolor paper. And the one I'm using today is actually new to me. Strathmore Vision. I got it just because it was this adorable 6x8 size, which I've not seen before, or 6x9, sorry. So we'll see how that paper works out today. But I usually use the Canson XL
which you can get at Michael's. I almost said AC Moore, but that doesn't exist anymore. You can probably get it at Joann's too. I've not ever shopped for it there, so I can't remember if they have it or not, but they probably do. But it's fairly easy to find. So I got my 2 lines. I'm gonna curve the top. I mean, you can have a lot of fun with popsicles. You don't just have to paint on them. You could probably embellish them with things in your craft stash if you wanted to. You could put glitter or stickers. All right, so I've got 2 on here. And I'm going to draw another one on here. Or maybe 2. Maybe we'll have time to do a couple more. But for sure today we're going to do these 3. But like I always say, feel free to use the colors that you like, the colors that you enjoy. Nice, simple, easy, quick shape to draw. And if you didn't want to draw it over and over and over again, if you have parchment paper in your kitchen, you can use that and trace. Draw one, and then you can trace it going forward. That way you can make lots and lots of popsicles. And Lorraine and I were just talking about mailing bookmarks in with greeting cards. What a cool idea. And if you make them yourselves, you can make sure that they fit in the envelope, because sometimes they're really long and they might not fit in the greeting card envelope. How fun would it be to send a handmade popsicle bookmark to your friends for their summer reading? I think that's pretty neat. All right. So, got all the popsicles drawn. Now I'm going to start painting them. So they're going to look slightly different because I'm not going to use the bright paints that I use. But if you haven't joined us before, make sure you wet your brush very well. If you have a new brush, it might have some stiff stuff on it because they don't want the brush to get hurt in transit. So you might have to really like smush it into the bottom of your water cup. And you just sort of tap it off on the side. If you have your watercolors like this, you might want to just splash a little water on the colors that you want so that they'll be nice and ready by the time you start painting. Okay. I think we're going to start with our lime popsicle, and I might just, so this technique is called the wet on dry, which means that I painted that yellow, and then when it was fully dry, I came over it and put the limes on there. This one has the wet on wet technique and the wet on dry. So you see these sort of diffuse looking areas. I put little drops of the color while that purple was wet, and then when the whole thing dried, then I painted the blueberries on there. And this one, I painted the yellow while the pink was wet, and they kind of ran together in the middle, and then I used the wet on dry technique to create the middle little popsicle shape. So I'll show you how to do all of this. So first, we're going to use a little yellow to fill in this one. And just take your time and fill in your shape. If you want to erase your lines after, you have to make sure that your paint does not touch your lines, because once the paint touches the line,
it's sort of trapped under there. But if you're cutting it out, it doesn't matter because you can cut around that line. And again, you can carefully erase so that you'll see a shadow of the line. I'm just going to work my way around that shape really carefully. And you can use your brush like this, up and down, or you can use it sideways and it'll help you fill in that shape even faster. And I'm making sure that my paint has a good bit of water on there. In fact, I'm going to add a little bit more. And I can dab so hard into that paint because it's not fresh paint that I just squeezed out of the tube. This is paint that's been dried for a while. At least overnight, but mine's been dried for several weeks. Just want to move that paint around until it's as even as possible, or as even as you like it. So. And we're going to let that dry. And when it's dry, we'll come in and draw our lines. So I'm going to move on, and I'm going to do the purple color, and I'll show you how I did the purple and the blue. First, I have to mix up a purple. If you have red and blue, you can mix a purple. I'm going to mix pink and aqua together to get my shade of purple. I'm rinsing my brush before I go into my next paint color. Grab a little tiny bit of that aqua and mix. Rinse. Grab a little bit more. It got a little too purple. I want it to be more magenta, so I'm going to rinse my brush and grab more of that pink. And I'm just going to keep going back and forth into the blue and the pink until I get a color I like. And it's not going to be as bright as that one. And actually, I tried a different shade of blue and I think I like it better. So I'll show you what I do. I rip a piece of my paper towel and I use it to clean that paint off a little bit. So now I have more mixing space and I'm going to go at it again. First, I'm going to put the pink. Funny, I've never tried that blue with this pink before, and something made me pick up a little of it, and I kind of liked it. It was a lot brighter. I'm going to rinse my brush. I'm going to move this up so you can see better. A little bit of that blue. Oh, that's much brighter. Wow, that's pretty. That's actually the color I need to drop in where I want my blueberries. So I'm going to clean another area to mix purple. And so what I'm doing here is I took a little bit of water and I used it to wet the palette. And I'm just going to take a paper towel, wipe it up. Now, after you're done painting, you can certainly clean this off completely, but I like to leave it on the odd chance that I'm going to want to use some of the colors that are already pre-mixed. And if I don't, and I need room, then I'll clean it off, because there's no point wasting paint. Kind of like when I mixed that purple and tossed it. Oopsies. I try not to do that very often. Oh yeah, that's pretty. Yep, nice and bright. All right. So now that I have a purple that I like, and that's that blueberry color, I'm going to fill in And I'm using a fair amount of water. See how that paint is kind of moving around on there? Just going to carefully go around the edges. I'm going to fill this popsicle all in without getting into the yellow. Anybody have any questions so far? Or are we doing good? I need to mix up more paint.
No questions so far. We're doing good.
All right. Whoops. Okay, see, I grabbed a little too much blue. The blue's very strong. And I knew that, so I shouldn't have been so heavy-handed, but I got excited. All right, so I'm going over where I painted just because the purple's slightly different. And I'm just going to keep covering. And you see on here, when I move my brush back and forth, that water is moving. I put a lot of water on there. Not so much that if I picked up my paper and held it vertically, it would cascade off the edge of the page, but you want to keep it fairly wet and shiny for the next step. Okay, and what I'm going to do is take that pretty blueberry shade that I mixed up. I'm going to put that on my brush. And on a couple areas, I'm just going to tap my brush and that blue color will start filling in. And this is sort of the areas that I'm going to be mostly putting the blueberries in. And you're noticing that that color is diffusing out. Well, it's diffusing out because the paint below it is wet. And we have a Watercolor 101 class coming up in a couple of weeks. And we'll go into all these techniques in depth. I'm just tapping the tip of my brush. I'm not swiping my brush back and forth because that'll blend everything together. And so you get this spot effect. If your spots are running into the purple and turning it into one color, it means your popsicle was a little too wet. That's fine. You can just put another layer of purple on there and do it again. You'll get a nice fun layered look that way. This is a technique that takes a little bit of patience and a little bit of learning. So you see how wet that paper is. You can see how shiny it is. But if I were to hold it upside down, the water is not running off. If you hold it upside down and your water starts running off, that's when you know you've used too much water and you just wait for it to dry a little bit before you do the dots. So we've got our yellow waiting for limes. Almost dry, not quite. And then we have our blueberry popsicle. And I'm going to give you a couple minutes to get that, and then I will move on to this popsicle over here. And then we'll invent a popsicle over here. Maybe I'll let you guys leave some suggestions as to what you want me to do with that fourth popsicle, what you want me to paint on there. And if you're going to cut them out to make bookmarks, I would definitely paint them, then cut around them. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to catch up and ask any questions if you have them. Remember, if this purple one didn't quite work out, you can do it again. You have some time. All right, I'm gonna go in and start the bottom coat of that. So I want pink on the top and I want yellow on the bottom. Doesn't matter which one you start with. Just gonna start filling in with pink. Feel free to use another color if you don't have pink.
Someone suggested you do a creamsicle for the fourth one.
Ooh. That might be fun. I'm gonna wait till all the suggestions come in and then we'll decide together. But that's a good one.
Someone said the dots are not spreading. Is the bottom paint too dry?
Too dry. Yep, definitely too dry. So what you can do is paint another layer of purple and do it again. It's a delicate balance. So I painted my pink on here, and again, this paint's very wet. Gonna rinse my brush out. I'm gonna paint the yellow on the bottom, and I'm gonna let them touch. I'm gonna paint that yellow all the way at the bottom first before I let it mix. And I may have gotten this yellow a little too wet, so I'm gonna rinse my brush off, dry it on my paper towel, and then start moving that paint around with that dry, thirsty brush. Instead of depositing more water on it with an already wet brush, we dried it off. And I went a little outside of the lines there. I don't think you can see it, but that's totally fine. If you're gonna cut it, it's not a problem. Then when I come to this area, I'm gonna kind of just push my brush back and forth into the pink and back down. And I'm just gonna clean up that edge. And I'm just gonna let that blend however it blends. Some of that yellow is gonna go up into the pink, some of the pink is gonna flow down into the yellow. I'm gonna show you that again, just as two rectangles. How about that? So what we had was pink on top, and it's very wet, but it's not runny wet. Like if I were to look at my paper, if I were to put my head down and look at the paper sideways, like really carefully, there's no dome. So you know how if you were to pour water onto paper, it would be kind of 3D? I'm not seeing that here. It's still very flat. If it were 3D, then for sure if you pick the paper up, it would just leak straight off of the page. So you don't want it that way. So we had pink on top, rinse my brush out, and then we had yellow on the bottom. And where that yellow and pink met, I just took my brush, not this way, but this way, and kind of pushed and pulled. Push some of that yellow up into the pink and pull some of it back down. And you might have to scrub at it a little bit with your brush to get the blending to happen, because it may have dried a little bit. If it dried too much, this blending will never happen. And you can do that as much or as little as you want. I want it a little bit rough, but if you wanted it to look really, really smooth, you would really take your time and blend. But I think this texture is nice for a popsicle. And then we're going to let that dry because we're going to have to do the inside bits. Anybody struggling with the blend, or are we doing good? I guess we're doing good with the blend. All right, so we are going to go back over to our first one. I put my hand in the blueberry one, so now I have a blue hand, blue finger. And we're going to draw this lime. So what I have here is a full lime on the bottom and a half lime up top. And I did green. If you wanted to do an orange slice, you can do an orange slice. In fact, maybe I'll do one orange slice and one lime slice in case somebody wants to do an orange, so that you can see how I do it. Same exact technique. You're just going to change your color. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the lime. And you have to make sure that this is dry. If it's not dry, wait a couple minutes till it's dry, or else your lines are going to blur on the edges. Okay. I'm just mixing up a nice lime colored green. I'm using sap green, and I may put a little bit of yellow mix into it, but go ahead and mix. If you have green, mix a little yellow into it, just a tiny little bit, or you can mix blue and yellow together to get a nice green. I got some sap green. Rinse my brush off. And mix a little bit of yellow into my green. Just until you like the shade of green. I'm not super particular about it. All right, so you can draw it fully in the middle so it's not cut off on the edge, but I kind of like it cut off on the edge. So I'm going to draw a circle. Try to make sure my hand's not blocking. I'm going to draw a circle, or somewhat of a circle, like so. And I would put another one up here, but I don't want to do two limes. I'm going to do an orange and a lime. And you don't want that line to be too thick, but you want to be able to see it. Now what I'm going to do with that same green is I'm going to draw little teardrop shapes, but they're not going to quite meet in the middle. There's going to be a little bit of, there we go, a little bit of space in the middle. And I'm also not filling them in perfectly. I'm going to leave space. And when I leave that space, it'll give that texture of pulp. So here we go. I'm just going to start on the corner. Maybe I'm going to pretend that half of this teardrop has been cut off, like so. And then I'm going to fill it in with these little up-down strokes, but I'm going to leave gaps to suggest that it's that lime pulp. Like that. Super easy. Focus. Haven't quite figured out the ins and outs of focusing yet. Maybe if I cover the stuff behind it, it has no choice but to focus. And then I'm just going to do them clockwise around, and I'm going to angle them slightly. And I'm just going to keep going now. Just don't let them touch in the middle because you want that little open space in the middle. So the top of my teardrop shape, I'm just kind of following that line that we drew, the outline. Or rather, it's probably more of a rounded wedge shape. And I think when you do these little illustrations, the wonkier they are, the more charming it is. So don't be hard on yourself if it looks a little wonky, because I think that that's more fun to look at than a perfectly drawn line. And that's what that looks like. Isn't that fun? And then I'm going to do an orange up here, but maybe I'll do a full round orange. Oh, I got lots of green on that brush. Gotta get that off. All right. Okay. So now, anybody have any trouble with this, or did you guys do okay? If anybody has any questions, let me know. I am going to go straight into the orange. And because I don't want to put my hand in that lime slice because it's really wet right now, I'm going to flip this paper around. And you guys know I like to move my paper a lot while I paint, just to make it as comfortable as possible for my hand. I'm going to go around. And I shouldn't say I'm drawing a circle. I'm drawing a circular shape because it's not quite a perfect circle. But if you wanted a perfect circle, you can definitely get a compass or a bottle cap and trace that. But mine's going to be circular. Like I said, I like imperfections in art. I think it's fun. So that's what my circular shape looks like. Looks okay. Looks like maybe the orange fell out of the grocery store bag and rolled around a little bit, but we'll go with that. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just pick a place to start. And if you want to think about it, you can think about it like the numbers on a clock. And not all, if you slice open an orange and look at the segments when you cut it this way, they're not always all even. Sometimes they're a little There's some skinny ones and there's some wider ones. So they don't all have to be perfect. I just try to make sure that they're angled towards the center. Oops. Need a little bit of water there. If your paint's not moving on your paper, like it's sort of sticking like a marker almost, you need to add more water. So I'm going to draw this little triangular wedge. And then I'm going to round the top, and I'm not letting it touch that line. And then I'm going to fill it in with these up-down strokes. So that they suggest pulp lines or pulp bits. Okay, controversial topic. Who likes pulp in their orange juice and who likes orange juice without pulp in it? I think pulpy orange juice is good. My husband does not like pulpy orange juice.
That's
so we
funny,
take
Kris.
turns. It's such a huge deal. It's so funny how passionate people are about their orange juice.
I know, it really is. I like pulp if it's fresh squeezed, but
Ooh, yeah.
if it's not, then I just like it regular. So both.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That is.
Someone said lots of pulp, exclamation point.
I'm with you on that. I love pulpy orange juice.
It tastes more authentic when it's got a lot of pulp in it.
True. And I'm just keep on doing these little V-shaped wedges all the way around like that. Anybody having trouble?
We have a nice big group here today, but everybody's so quiet. I think they're just really enjoying painting.
It's so much fun, and it's so much fun to invent a popsicle.
And we have a lot of repeat attendees, so I think they're starting to get the hang of the painting now.
Oh,
Not as many
awesome.
questions as when we first started these programs.
Awesome. Well, I think that 101 class that we have coming up will also be really helpful, even to people who've been doing the classes before. I'll make sure that not all of it is super beginner terms. I'll throw in a little bit of advanced or somewhat advanced in the middle there for people who have been taking the class for a while too. But they'll still be easy enough concepts for everybody to grab. It's fun because you're not going to be painting anything in particular. You're just going to be doing a whole lot of just little test swatches, which can be so much fun because there's no pressure at all. It doesn't need to look like anything. Okay, so I think my little middle area looks a little crazy because this guy was a little too short. I'm just gonna elongate it a little bit and maybe this one too. Like that. That's fun. We have some sort of tutti frutti pop going on there. Like I can't quite say lemon lime, orange orange lime popsicle going on there. Oops, got a little green paint on the bottom here, but you know what? It's gonna be I'm gonna cut around it. And I'm just gonna let that dry. And when they're all done, then I'll paint in the popsicle sticks. Okay. So hopefully your blueberries are dry, and hopefully you did okay with the oranges. I think a lot of you did that orange class, and we did this, so I think this might be something that's not new for you either. And you could put little flecks of the orange and green in there if you wanted to. You can write the word lime around the side here. You can write the word orange. It's your popsicle, and guess what? It's not a real life popsicle, so you can do whatever you want with it. If I had words on my real life popsicle, I might be worried. So I'm just mixing up my blueberry color because it has dried. And I'm calling it blueberry because I intended it as blueberry, but if you really look at the shape, it almost looks like little tiny cherries or something. So what it is, and I'm gonna overlap some of them with the blue spots on here. I think that's a fun look. So I'm just gonna draw a teeny circle with the tip of my paintbrush. I'm gonna leave a little tiny gap. I'm not filling that in completely. Do you see that little dot on the top? It's just gonna suggest a little bit of light on that blueberry. And then I'm going to draw another circle next to it, but I'm going to kind of overlap them. So I'm just going to, and I'm also going to leave a little dot open on that. And you don't have to, I just think it looks fun. And I think what I'm going to do is finish this blueberry and do it larger for you on my test sheet of paper. If you have fuzz in your brush, you can just pinch and pull it off. It happens. And then I'm just going to draw two little stems, connect them. I'm just going to draw a little leaf shape. But I'm going to do this larger so you guys can see it better. See? It's a cute little berry. But we're going to grab the scratch paper. I'm going to do, here, I'll just go straight into that blue. So I got lots of paint. All right, so what I did was I drew a circle just using the tip of my brush, like so. And then I'm just going to fill it in. I'm going to leave just a tiny little bit of white space. I mean, it's going to be purple space because it's on purple, but it's not going to be blueberry colored. Just so it shows that there's a little bit of light on that nice, shiny, round blueberry. Like that. Isn't that fun? Then I'm going to pretend that the other one is overlapping, or underlapping rather. I'm going to draw another little circular shape. Fill it in. And then also leave a little bit of white space on the top there. Like so. Now, if these were going to be huge, I would put in special shadowing to show that this one is over that one, but it's a teeny little blueberry on a popsicle, so we won't worry about that. And then I just put two little stems, like so. And then to the stem, I just drew. And the reason I drew it is because using this leaf technique that I've taught you guys, which I just failed at, sorry, oops. They're way too tiny for that. So you can draw one leaf, you can draw two leaves, you can draw three, however you want to, but this is what larger, this is what your blueberries are going to look like. And so I'm just going to fill in more blueberry shapes everywhere. Now, not always are they going to be crisscrossing the little blue, or yeah, the little bluer spots. And that's fine. And not all of them have to have stems either. I'm just going to do one up here that's not crisscrossing anything. And maybe I'm going to make the stem go inward. Like these little happy blueberries are just kind of floating around the popsicle. This one dried a little light. I'm just going to go over it with my paintbrush. And feel free to do that because watercolor will dry a lot lighter than you think. So you can go over things with a second layer. Maybe I'll do just one blueberry down here. Maybe I'll put the light on the opposite side to the little empty space. And maybe this one won't have a leaf on it. And I think I'm just going to do one more up top. Unfortunately, that's going to give me an even number, and I like odd numbers when I paint, but I think because I have some doubles and some single, it'll be okay. I just think that odd numbers are usually a little more interesting to look at. And that's how you get your blueberry popsicle. Isn't that adorable? And think about it, if you were to do this in pink with red, it would look like a cherry popsicle. Oh, that would be really cute. I'm gonna give you guys a couple of minutes, and then we're gonna go on to the middle here. And then, did we have any more votes, Lorraine? Anything other than creamsicle?
No,
You know, we can do.
I do got one of those bomb pops. I don't know, when I was little, I used to get bomb pops from the ice cream man. They were like red, white, and blue.
Oh, like
Know
those
what I mean?
shaped like a rocket, kind of.
Yeah.
We could do that too, actually.
But you have better ideas than I do, Kris. Go for it. If anyone else has any ideas, please type them in the chat box. A lime pop would be nice. That's too. Something in that pretty green that you have mixed there.
We could do
Oh,
a
mint
light
chocolate
pop.
chip, someone said. Mint chocolate chip.
Ooh, oh my gosh, all of these suggestions are amazing. All right, so I'll do this one and then we'll have a couple of minutes and maybe I can just do a couple of those suggestions.
Okay.
All right. So what I did for the middle of this, you know how sometimes you get the popsicles that have those two little sort of scooped out bits in the middle, I guess from the mold. So I gotta clean this pink up because I got some blue in it. All right, so I used just plain pink. Can't remember which pink I used, so we'll just roll with it. And what I did was I drew two, they're almost popsicle stick shaped. So like turn sideways, I guess it's like an equal sign. So two lines, not quite hitting the top and the bottom. So about 3/4 of an inch away from the top. And just be very careful. You can draw it out and fill it in if you wanted to. I'm just going to draw it with my brush. So you just want two lines, two fairly thin lines. We're gonna thicken up one area, but just to get the shape, you want two fairly thin lines. And I'm doing little sketchy lines. I'm not dragging my paintbrush the whole way down. And then I'm sort of connecting those with a little bit of a curve on the bottom and a curve on the top. What I did was I made this top right section kind of hard to see. I made it, there you can see it. I made it a little darker on the top right. So I've kind of filled it in a little bit. And I'll hold this up so you can see. So I filled in one side a little thicker than the other. Then I rinsed my brush and I just ran that somewhat damp brush just along the edge of where I just drew that line, just to kind of coax that paint out and blend it just a little bit. You don't want to put any more fresh paint. You just want to soften those lines that you put down. So it looks like that. See how that happened? Made it look 3D. And then we do the same thing next to it. If it's easier for you to draw a straight line sideways, feel free to make it.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Kris. Can you explain again how you bleed the pink into the yellow?
Yeah, I'll go back to that after I finish this. And then you just, if it's easier for you to go sideways, go sideways. Like so. And then we thicken up the top right side. Then you want to rinse your brush. You don't want it very wet. And then you just use that damp brush to soften the lines that you just drew on the inside. Again, if you feel more comfortable sideways, turn it around sideways. And that's how you get that look. Really looks like a popsicle. I'm going to go back to that technique of mixing the pink and the yellow together real quick. So we have that pink that's up here, right? And then you have your yellow on the bottom. And to make them meet, you just rinse your brush out, tap it off because you don't want it to be too wet. And you just push the yellow into the pink and you pull. So you push and you pull. So it's like push and pull, push and pull. And then it will do what it wants. You can try to coax it with the tip of your brush a little bit in some areas if you want to. But that's how you mix together the pink and the yellow. Is that better? You understand that one? And I'm going to put the stick in really quickly, and then we'll move on to this last guy. Or guys, we might do a couple. I don't know. I might do the rocket one and maybe a creamsicle, or can't remember. There was another suggestion too. All right. So for the stick.
Just so you know, Kris, that second explanation did help. Thank you.
Oh, good. Sorry, I couldn't stop painting the line to explain, so I'm glad that you could wait a second. I'm mixing together orange and blue to get brown, but you might already have a brown on your palette. And when you get a brown that's a shade that you're happy with, use that to just fill in your stick. So be careful along the bottom, because you don't want your popsicle to, oops, sorry, my head banged the light. You don't want your popsicle to look like the stick is bleeding into it. And then you just fill in the shape. And then what I do is, while the popsicle's still wet, I just take my brush and tap into the top so that more pigment ends up there, so it looks like there's a little bit of shadow under the popsicle, so it looks a little more 3D. And I'll show you it again. I didn't mix up enough brown, so I'll mix a little more. Someone that paints with so much brown, because I do a lot of nature stuff, I probably should put a convenience brown on my palette. And what that means, convenience brown, is a brown that's already pre-mixed, and then you can just add other things into it to make it cooler or warmer, whatever you need. So you carefully fill in along the line of where the popsicle ends. So you want to make sure your popsicle's really dry before you paint that stick in. And then you fill in the rest of your stick. I use brown, but you could honestly use any color that you wanted to. It doesn't have to be popsicle stick colored necessarily. And then I sort of just kind of coax that paint and tap the tip of my brush towards the bottom of the stick, or rather the top of the stick, where it meets the popsicle, so that it looks a little darker. I'm going to do that again. First, start up at your popsicle and be careful. And then I kind of coax that paint up. And then I just kind of tap what's left on my brush to deposit more paint at the top where the popsicle stick starts. So just so there's a little bit of shadow of the popsicle underneath there. And that's how you get your popsicle sticks. And of course, when it dries, if it's not dark enough, you can go in and put a little more paint to darken it up. Okay. So our first suggestion was a creamsicle. And now the creamsicle, those are orange Popsicles, correct? Are they marbled looking, or is it the one that has like full orange on the outside? I think they're just orange. Here, I'm gonna Google creamsicle. I might be a popsicle failure, guys. I don't really know what a creamsicle is. I've seen them at the grocery store. Okay, so does that look like a creamsicle to you guys? So in that case, I will not paint the creamsicle because it's identical to this one in the way you do it. So instead of this blend of pink and yellow, you want to do the whole thing orange, and then when it dries, those seem to have the little divots on them. You can go ahead and just use the orange on another layer to do that, and that would be your creamsicle. So I guess this would be a mint chocolate chip situation here. So I'm gonna mix up a minty green. So I'm gonna mix a little bit of a turquoisey green with some water. Ooh, this is fun. I never would have thought of doing this. I'll fill that in. Ooh, that's gonna be pretty. I'm gonna put a little more green in that. Might be a little too green now. So you see when you mix your colors together, you just adjust as you go. And then you fill it in. And you're gonna have to let it dry really well before we put the chocolate bits in, because it'll end up looking like all the chocolate melted somehow into the mint popsicle. Is a mint chocolate chip popsicle a real thing? Because that sounds delightful. I've heard of mint chocolate chip ice cream. Okay, so we're gonna let this green dry. Ooh, that's pretty. You guys give really good suggestions. The creamsicle suggestion is good too, because now I need to have a real one. We have to draw the rocket popsicle. Okay, so those are sort of rounded on the edge. What flavor are these usually, Lorene? I've never had one. And then they get a little wider. And round off the bottom. And I think there's some little round.
You're so incredibly good at mixing colors, Kris.
Thank you. Does that look about right for the rocket popsicle shape?
Yeah. Maybe a little thinner, like as it goes down on the sides.
Okay.
Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I think it does actually.
I think when we paint it in, it would
Yeah.
give it more context. All right. So I think that it might be a little longer. And I think the tops of these might be a little pointier. And it's red, then blue, and then there's white in the middle. So I think these go down. I think they get a little pointier up top. There we go. A little bit better. All right. So that's our basic drawing. We're going to get to painting it in. Grab a palette that has a little bit more of a red in it. Okay. So it's about 1/3 red. Ooh, that's going to be pretty. And then before that red dries, we're going to rinse our brush completely clean, top it off a little bit, and then push and pull to soften up that line and bring it into the white. Clean the brush again. I'm just going to go sideways here just so that no more red gets pulled any further down. And just go back and forth. So that's the start of it. It's sort of a almost sky blue looking blue. Maybe with a little bit of that. Mix up whatever blue you have. I'm gonna push these out of the way. And mixing a color that you see gets easier as you do it. So don't get frustrated if you can't get the actual shade of blue. I happen to have a lot of colors to pull from too. Your palette would likely be a little more limited, but I think I've mentioned this before. Every time I go to Michael's or somewhere like that, I buy a tube or two of something that strikes my fancy, something that grabs my attention. And that's how I built up my collection. All right, so I'm going to clean my brush, tap it off, and we're going to do that push-pull thing. Pushing and pulling at the edge of that line. Push, pull. And I'm rinsing my brush off. I'm gonna flip it around because I'm gonna go sideways now because I don't want a lot of that blue in the white. Like so. And we have to let that dry before we put in any of that shadowing in the middle. And the shadowing will be blue on the bottom, red on the top, and I'm going to put a little bit of gray shadowing in the middle to suggest the white popsicle. I'm going to have to let that dry for a few minutes. The red's almost dry. I think while this dries, our mint, yep, our mint is dry, so we can put our little chocolate bits on there. And I think those chocolate bits are sort of more square-ish. I'm going to take nice dark brown. Start putting in maybe a little rectangle here. Oh, that's adorable. And a square, more square color, square shape. Maybe there's a little fleck or two. Haha, this is really cute. Little flicks of your brush. Maybe there's little chocolate bits here and there. Oh my gosh, I stopped talking because I got carried away painting. So I'm just putting little squares, rectangles, and little flicks.
I was wondering how you were going to do that. It looks so cool.
Thanks.
Looks yummy, actually.
It does. I definitely have to have a popsicle today.
Yeah. Everyone doing okay out there? Any comments or questions?
So Lorraine put a link in the group, in the chat, to my student Facebook group. If you're not already a member, you can request to become a member through that link. It doesn't cost anything, but it's the easiest way to reach me. I post about the library classes and other classes, and I go live in there sometimes and do little freebie classes. And you're welcome to join because you've taken one of my classes now. It's only for students. And Lorraine and I love to see what you make. So we would love, love, love to see pictures of your popsicles. You could post it in there. You could email either of us. My email is Kris Loya Art, KrisLoyaArt @gmail.com. And Lorraine can give you hers. And you can email either or both of us so we can see your fun popsicles. Okay, that one, the rocket's dry. Just gonna give this a quick stick. And then put the shading on the rocket popsicle. I'm so glad we had time to do two. A little rushed, but I'm glad we had a chance to do 2 extras. Okay, so for the red area, you just want to darken up the one side like we did with the pink popsicle. And then just one quick line down the other side, like so. I'll hold it up closer so you can see what I did. So the one side is thicker than the other, a little bit. And then I'm going to clean my brush off, tap that water off, and just use the tip of the brush to gently soften those lines. Now, I'm going to want to soften the bottom of the line where it gets close to the red. I want to be careful because I don't want to pull any of that red or pink down too much into the white. So I might actually go backwards and go up into the pink. I have to soften that up quite a bit. Like so. And then we're going to leave that middle area well enough alone and do the same thing with the blue. I want to just darken up and then blend carefully so we're not going to get any of that blue or not too much of that blue in the area that's white. You want to be careful when you blend that line back and forth. You don't want too much to end up in there. I'm going to go backwards a little bit. You can even use your finger to swipe it backwards. I'm just going to take a little bit of black mixed with water, not white. I'm going to carefully continue that line. You don't want it to be too dark because the white will just give a slight gray shadow. So we're going to blend that out a lot. Clean my brush off really good. And blend, 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 blend. I'll flip it over so it's easier for me to blend the other side. And I'm really scrubbing because I want to blend because I really don't want any harsh, dark lines on there. If you blend it up into the red, clean your brush off before you start going back in there to blend. And that's what your popsicle looks like. Does that look authentic to your childhood popsicle, Lorraine? And then we're going to just draw in a stick.
Yes, it does, except you need like part of the red dripping down. It would always melt.
Just going to draw in a quick stick.
That's so pretty. I love that you did the grooves in it. Because there's something about those grooves
Yeah.
that taste even better, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And then what you can do is, since you mentioned red, we're not going to do it so much bleeding into it, but maybe a few little splatters of the red and of the blue. And just give it a little movement, a little bit of fun.
4th of July looking popsicle.
There you go.
I love
There
it.
you go.
Oh, that's awesome, Kris. I love it.
Little fun popsicle for a fun celebration.
Yeah.
You could photocopy those and turn it into a 4th of July or Memorial Day invitation.
Yeah. Place card or
Bookmark again. Yeah. So does anybody have any questions really quickly before we go? We have a couple minutes. Happy to answer anything. So we did the rocket popsicle. We did the pink and yellow mint chocolate chip, which I have to say, I think the mint chocolate chips turned out to be my favorite. We did the lime and we did the blueberry. And I hope you guys had fun painting popsicles today.